Now that you understand a little bit about how particles work, I'm going to show you how we can create a really cool particle effect. We'll be customizing our particles and having them follow a particular path. You can use this sort of effect in so many ways. Let me show you how you can create something like this. I'm going to begin by creating a null element. I'll just start off by creating a null object, and as you can see, it's going to be named null8. The reason why is because I've created multiple null objects throughout my project, and so every time I create a new one, it's going to have a unique name. With the null layer selected, I'm going to use my pen tool and I'm going to draw a path. This is the path that you want the particles to follow. If your path is not in the shape to your liking, you can always go back and make adjustments to the path once you've created it. The important part is that you create a path that you'll want the particles to follow. Once you've drawn your path, you're going to go ahead and you're going to open up the null layer, go into masks, and you're going to select the mask path. Here, we'll go ahead and copy the mask path by using Command or Control C. Next, I'm going to open up my transform properties. I'm going to select my position property, and I'm going to use Command or Control V to paste the path in as the path for the position property. At this point, we no longer need the mask, so I'll just delete that. And if we scrub through the animation, you will see that the null element is going to follow the path that we've created. If you want to change the timing, you can always select all of the keyframes, and if you hold down your Option key and grab the last keyframe and stretch it out, you will be stretching out all the keyframes proportionately. So I'm going to make this animation take roughly 4 seconds. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create the particle system that we want to use and finally follow the path. I'll go ahead and make a new solid element. The color of the solid doesn't really matter since this ultimately won't be showing. Then I'm going to go ahead and get the CC particle world effect and I'm going to drag it onto my solid. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into the producer section of the particle world, and we're going to be using some expressions in order to have the particles follow the path that we've established. To do this, I'm going to Option or Alt click on the X position stopwatch. This is going to open up my expression dialog box, and we're going to want to use the following expression. The important thing to remember here is that when you write your expression, you're going to want to use the name of your null element. My null element is called null8, and there is a space in it. So make sure you place the name of your null element within the quotes in order for this to work correctly. I've gone ahead and placed the expressions that you'll need in order to make this project work in the description of this video. So if you're not sure exactly what they say, you might want to reference the description. Next, I'm going to do the same thing on the y-axis. So I'll Option or Alt click on the y-axis to open up the expression dialog box. We're going to use a similar expression, although it is worth mentioning that you'll want to make sure that the layer that contains the path is referenced inside of the quotes. And this time we're going to be using the height property in our calculation. Finally, I'm going to want to do the same thing on the Z position property of the effect. Once again, you're going to want to make sure that your expression matches mine except for the name of the layer. Your layer may be different than mine. Now that I have the expressions written, I'm going to want to take this solid layer and make it a 3D layer. If we scrub through the timeline, you will see that the particle system is already following my null element, which is exactly what we want. However, I'm going to modify the particles as I want them to look a little bit different. What I'll do is I'll go into the particle effects and we're going to make the following changes. I'm going to augment the birth rate and reduce this down a little bit. I'll use 1.6. For my longevity, I'm going to make this 0.5. Then I'll open up my physics setting, and instead of using explosive, I'm going to use twirl. For my velocity, I'm going to reduce this down to 0.4. I'm going to set my gravity to 0, and then underneath the particle area, I'm going to change the particle type. This can really be anything that you want. I'm going to be using Faded Spear. And as you can see, if I scrub through, it's going to transform the particles into some glowing dots. I'm going to alter my birth size and I'll reduce this down to 0.1. We'll leave the depth size at 0.25 and I'm going to increase the size variation all the way up to 100% so I get more of a variety of particle sizes. At this point, you can set your birth and death color. So you'll just go in and set them to whatever color you would like your particles to be. I'm going to be using a teal and a purple shade. And now if we go ahead and rewind our project, and you'll want to go ahead and let this RAM preview because it's going to need to render the effects. If we rewind and play our animation, you can see that the particles are now following that motion path that we created. Now my motion path is not quite off the screen, so my particles are going to remain percolating at the right-hand side. In order to make changes to this, I'm going to go into my null and I'm going to select the path, and I'll just want to make sure that I drag that ending keyframe a little bit farther off of my composition. In addition, I'm going to add easing to all of the keyframes, and now I'll go ahead and RAM preview out my project once again. And you can see this is the results of what I have. If you combine this effect with some other elements, you can really create some stellar animations. Here you can see I've combined the effect that we just created with some text, and the text is using a mask to appear, so it kind of looks like the sparkles are generating the text as it appears onto the screen. Clearly, there are a ton of ways you can use effects like this, but I find that being able to create particles and have them follow a path is a really interesting way that you can combine using particles with other animations.